Hey, how's it going? So last night there was an exciting episode in this drama we call World War III. Oh yeah, we have the opening of potentially the second front of this war. Oh yeah, because last night the Israelis attacked a number of Iranian locations. Let me pull it up here. They attacked here. Sorry about this. I should have been better prepared. Okay, they attacked Iran and they attacked the Iranian Republican Guard headquarters, the Quds Republican Guard Special Forces base, an ammunition and drone production center, an oil refinery, a weapons factory, the Hamadan military base, and the Karaj military base. At the same time, there was weirdly an earthquake, apparently either a 5.3, 5.5 on the Richter scale earthquake in the city of Khoi. I don't know how to pronounce it. I've never actually heard of the city, so please forgive me. But anyway, these things happened last night, and I'll get to the earthquake in just a little bit because there's something there. But anyway, the point is that this was indisputably the Israelis who did this, because the night before, Benjamin Netanyahu announced on TV that tonight, all the evil terrorists are going to get a taste of, righteous vengeance or some shit like that, or words to the effect, okay? And so it's indisputably the Israelis who did this. Now, how they did it, was it them exclusively, or did they use proxies or partners? That's unclear at this time. The Iranians themselves are denying a lot of the locations of these attacks. I'm not exactly clear why, but that's not important for this conversation. What's important is that these attacks in these locations that I mentioned indisputably happened last night. And the obvious inference, although there is no proof at this time, but the obvious inference is that the Israelis did it. So what does this mean? Well, quite obviously, we can draw some simple inferences. Okay. The first one is that, and the most obvious, the Israelis would never have done this without the okay of the Americans. A lot of people think that the Israeli tail wags the American dog. It's more complicated than that, okay? Because in many ways that's true. In many ways, Washington considers Israeli security more important than American security. That's a fact. But at the same time, Washington sort of manages Israel like its pit bull. Sorry, that was a tongue twister. I didn't realize I was going to do that. Yeah, it manages Israel a little bit like the pit bull. And every once in a while letting it off the leash. And they let it off the leash last night, okay? And to attack Iran. Because Israel hates Iran with a passion. A lot of propagandists claim that, oh no, Israel doesn't hate the Iranian people, they just hate the mullahs. That's bullshit. Mm-hmm. They hate the Iranians with a passion, all of them, indiscriminately, okay? For reasons that, you and I can conjecture till the cows come home. My mouth is not working today, but anyway. But they hate them, okay? And so the Americans let them off the leash. That's obvious. They would never have gone ahead with this attack had they not gotten the go-ahead from the Americans. Don't kid yourself, okay? So why would Washington give the go-ahead to this attack? That's the question. Well, superficially, they want to interdict the Iranian supply of attack drones, kamikaze drones, to the Russians. Excuse me, let me just move my leg because it's fucking killing me, but it's getting better, by the way. On the other hand, they want to interdict that supply of drones, because it's never been clear if the drones that the Russians have been using in Ukraine are exclusively Ukrainian, or if exclusively Iranian, or if it's Iranian drones that are sent to Russia and the Russians put in some extra gear and then send them to the front, or if they are manufactured in Russia by the Russians under license from Iran. That relationship has never been clear. It doesn't really matter because these drones, the footage is quite spectacular of the little flying Doritos, right? But in the scheme of the war in general, they're not really important. Okay, they're just another taste treat in the Halloween candy bag. You know what I mean? It's not the main thing. So it's not really going to affect the Russians in any way. And so perhaps the superficial reason would have been that, but the much more important reason, okay, is that, see, the Americans want to further isolate Russia from the West And you see, the relationship between Russia and Israel has always been relatively good and relatively close. Because quite apart from the fact that a number of Jews, I mean millions, I think, of Jews in Israel come from Russia. Russia and previously the USSR and Israel had long-standing ties and fairly decent ones. I mean, do keep in mind that it was the Soviet Union that first recognized the state of Israel. Yeah, people tend to forget that. As of late, there have been differences of opinion, if you will, because the Syrian conflict has been a point of contention between these two countries, because obviously the Russians are supporting Assad, and the Israelis want Assad gone. Okay, so there's been that issue, but all in all, the relationship has been trundling along, no problem. Okay, and during the special military operation, the Israelis were very leery about getting swept up into the whole sanctions thing and the Russophobic thing, because of course they have a lot of Russian Jews in Israel who have fond memories of Russia and don't want to see it be considered an enemy of Israel. And so the effect of this, though, is that it antagonizes the Russians. Because Russia has all kinds of good relationships with Israel, perhaps, but it sees Iran as a long-term strategic partner, which it most obviously is. I mean, quite apart from the geography, both are oil-producing countries. It is to both of their best interest to maintain very good relations so as to manage their oil supply and their oil sales. And there are also a whole host of economic ties between Iran and Russia. The fact that these drones, these weapons, are being supplied by Iran to Russia or under license to Russia, as the case may be, that sort of like underlines the point. Their relationship is very important, and both the Iranians and the Russians want to continue to make this a strong pillar of their respective foreign policies. See, the relationship between Russia and Iran is crucial into the emerging global multipolar world. And so by Israel attacking Iran, the Israelis stupidly hurt themselves. Because the West, the Americans, I mean, when we talk about the West, when we talk about NATO, we're ultimately talking about the Americans in Washington. Now, they basically encouraged Israel to give in to its limitless hatred of the Iranians and carry out this attack. And what will it serve to do? To alienate the Russians. See? Potentially, it could lead to a point where Washington tells the Israelis, time to decide, us or the Russians. And the Israelis, because they depend so much on the Americans, depend on that foreign aid every year, depend on weapons that are sold at discount prices, and all other kinds of stuff that's going on, whereby the Americans are financially and directly supporting the state of Israel. Well, the Israelis are going to realize we have to stay in good with the Americans, and potentially they would be maneuvered by Washington into cutting ties with Russia. Insofar as Russia is concerned, it's not going to matter. Israel is a small country. 12 million people, 6 million Jews, and 6 million Palestinians? It's a small country. I mean, as far as the Russians are concerned, it doesn't really matter. And so if they break ties with Israel, it would be like breaking ties with, Italy. Who gives a fuck? I mean, from the Russian point of view, it doesn't really matter. Especially because since the start of the SMO, a lot of Russian Jews left Russia because they were opposed to the war and all the rest of it. Justified or not, it doesn't really matter. But the point is that there are a lot fewer Jews in Russia than there were before the start of this conflict. So the ties binding the two countries are a lot weaker on a familial level. And so what is going on here is that the Americans maneuvered the Israelis into essentially starting to sabotage their relationship with Russia. And if the Americans start encouraging the Israelis to go on more of these offensives against Iran, this will only further deteriorate Israeli-Russian relations. See? It's not helping the Israelis. The Israelis are foolish to have done this because it doesn't help them at all. Now, there's something else. I have to bring this up, you know. It sounds like I'm about to spout off some conspiracy theory or some nonsense about aliens and shit like that, but, you know, hear me out. See, I lived in Chile. We have earthquakes all the fucking time, right? A fairly decent earthquake. I mean, 5.5 is, you know, not something I really get out of bed for, right? But a 5.5 earthquake is fairly, you know, something. Okay, and I seen video footage of this town of Koi, and clearly they were not prepared for earthquakes. Okay, so that is not really an earthquake zone. I mean, just by the footage, you see a lot of the facades of the building have fallen off and shit. I mean, all kinds of damage, structural damage, or at least a superficial, you know, facade damage to buildings. Okay, and like I said, I'm from Chile, so I know earthquakes. And a 5.5 earthquake in Chile doesn't do shit. Okay. I mean, the buildings sway around a little bit, but nothing much, and no facade will fall off, or very few. And so that region, I would guess, is not really an earthquake-prone area. I don't really know. But setting that aside, I find it inconceivable that on the very night that there is this major offensive by the Israelis in Iran, there's an earthquake. I'm sorry, it's the odds are too astronomical. I just don't buy it, okay? And there are rumors, these are rumors, and these are fringe rumors off the deep end as far as I'm concerned, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. See, there's rumors that they actually used a tactical nuke. I don't know, and maybe I'm going to be shooting myself in the foot in terms of credibility by saying this, but it just seems weird. I mean, I'm sorry, you know? It just seems the coincidences are too astronomical, you know? I mean, like I said, I lived in an earthquake-prone country, Chile. I mean, it's right on the Andes, right on the Nazca plate, okay? I mean, we got earthquakes all the time, but it's not like when I say all the time. You know, an earthquake that you'd feel it, you know, once every maybe 6 months. You know, something like the earth is like shaking a little bit, you know? I mean, you're like, your ass is wriggling, and you're like, what's going on? Oh, it's just a little tremor. You know, maybe every 6 months, a year, okay? But like, on the very night of the attack, it just seems, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my credulity cannot be stretched that far. It's too perfect a coincidence. So I think something happened. I have no idea what. There are, you know, people saying this, you know? And there's video footage of some big explosion, but a big explosion can mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. And, you know, they blew up an oil refinery. And, you know, an oil refinery going up, that's a huge explosion. So I don't really know. I'm just putting it out there, okay? And I'm not quite sure why I'm putting it out there. I'm not sure if I'm going to put up this video with this section in it, because it just seems, I don't buy it. I mean, the coincidence is just too astronomical, okay? But anyway, be that as it may, diplomatically, geopolitically, this only hurts Israel. It only hurts Israel because, hang on a second. Oh, see, when I kind of like flex my knee like this, it hurts less, a lot less than a couple of days ago. But like laterally, oof, it's just a killer. But anyway, the point is that this hurts the Israelis, and they were foolish, and the Americans are goading the Israelis goaded them into this attack for sure. Perhaps we'll goad them into further attacks on Iran, and if they goad the Netanyahu government into breaking ties with Russia, would that mean the gloves are off insofar as the Israelis hurting the Russians somehow where it would really hurt? The Israelis are doing something incredibly stupid. It was smart of them to try to maintain, you know, it's sort of like an equidistance between Russia and the Americans insofar as the Ukraine conflict is concerned. But potentially, you know, this is opening up a second front in the Third World War. Because we are in a Third World War. Don't kid yourself. It's the Americans who are egging this on because they recognize that the global American empire is collapsing and it's in its death throes because of all kinds of internal problems, self-created problems that spanned, you know, decades, and they're all coming to a head, and so they're lashing out, and they are creating all kinds of conflict, all kinds of chaos, to bring the rest of the world down with them. That's what's going on with the global American empire. And this Third World War is because of the Americans. No, don't fool yourself, okay? And so, is this the opening of a second front? I don't know. Stay tuned for another exciting episode of World War III. Understand what's going on